everybody. Welcome to Vermont, the little state that could. Now, if you want to find the essence of New England, you must squeeze it out of a number of different places, many of which are right here in the Green Mountain State. We're in downtown Montpelier, which is the capital of Vermont, and the smallest state capital in the nation, with some 8,500 Green Mountain boys and girls. But Montpelier doesn't behave any differently than any cosmopolitan capital. There are 24-hour grocery stores and the opportunity to acquire virtually anything you might seek in a far larger community. All of Vermont has only about 500,000 people, but Montpelier, being its capital, takes itself very seriously in its role as the seat of state government and the attendant bureaucracy thereof. As we stand here above the Winooski River, okay, we're in for a surprise here in this town of 8,500 people as I pan to the state capitol building, the State House with its great golden dome. Conservative and understated, dignified and grand, say the guidebooks, modeled after the Temple of Theseus, no less. Beautiful building. This is the Pavilion Office Building, which was the object of much controversy between the conservationists and the demolition mongers who wanted to tear it down. Well, the conservationists won, and it still stands handsomely, and no less useful than if it had been replaced with something else. Serendipity dictates that this next shot illustrate the former statement, as the old cohabitates with the new. Crossing over 50 years, a late 30s coupe morphs into a heavy metal van in the blink of a state capitol eye. It is a nice day today. And look, if larger cities have their multiplexes, so can we here. This old cinema facade boasts 3 first-run movies, by golly. Why not? We're the state capital, aren't we? Dad blast it all. Why wouldn't we have our choice of picture shows? There's some cumulonimbus blowing past the old courthouse. And a pan to the right brings another view of this big little town. Various brick-rendered themes displayed along these good-looking building facades. Very nicely built and preserved, it must be said. No urban renewal allowed here. Not much, anyway. Standing under the awning of a general store. Vermont's got these great general stores, some of which we'll visit today. Herein is contained whatever you may need for whatever application. They may have only one of each, but what the hey, they can have some more for you by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. Wheelbarrow? Well, we got lots of wheelbarrows. What size you need? What you looking to move, young man? Okay, time to hit the road. One last shot of town here. Lots to see and do yet. If the weather holds, we should be able to chew up a lot of scenery today. And I'm going to end this shot on the ivy-clad stonework here. Nice to know you, Montpelier. You stand proud and tall among the other capitals of your republic. You got what it takes to represent the descendants of Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, who were organized to keep New York state expansion from gobbling up territory in Vermont, but you didn't know that. The highways are noted for their lack of billboards, Vermont being the first state to pass anti-billboard legislation. Vermont is apple country, and here at the Cold Hollow Cider Mill, they press a pretty good cup of juice. And lest we forget the Eve of All Hallows, there's pumpkins to be had. I can taste that tart nectar already. Cold, hollow cider mill. We're in Stowe, Vermont, the ski capital of the East, playing host to 44 ski slopes nearby, the greatest being Mount Mansfield, a short shoes away. Great general store here. And if I can just track left and do a quick pan, great old barber pole. We're about 6 months away from ski season, so Stowe is in its quieter time of year. Commerce doesn't bypass this place, it passes right through it. Let's pop into the general store here, shall we? If I can finish this shot with a freeze. The New England general store doesn't quite know what it wants to be anymore. It certainly preserves artifacts of its past, old phone booths, old Coca-Cola coolers, and wood floors and counters. But should it stock 14 sizes of nails and 13 kinds of screws? Or only a few of each, and the latest magazines from the outside world? Is the general store here to service the local populace, or to make 5 times its investment by catering to the hordes of tourists who enter these doors in search of the quaint past and to buy Snickers bars and picture postcards? Well, it's a little bit of both at this point, more tourist than local in some stores. Which is too bad in a way, because there just ain't no Kmarts in these parts. But there sure is plenty of atmosphere. Some wooden gingerbread here, nestling in quite nicely with the brick buildings and the ever-present white steeple. All right, our very first covered bridge. But as I zoom out and perspective changes, you see that even though covered, it's not for vehicular traffic, but only for pedestrians. That track right here. Oh, good, there's somebody coming through here for perspective. Let's see if I can get this guy. Hey, get back here. Gotcha. Great covered bridge. Hopefully we'll see a couple more today as we travel hither and yon in search of the essence of this green mountain state. But this one, high above the deep gorge below, is perfect for right now. These cows in a huddle deciding on the next play reminds me that dairy farming is a very big part of the economy of this state. Couldn't resist this shot. Sun-dappled leaves with only the slightest hint of the beginning of autumn. And a pan to the left shows you exactly where I stand in relation to the previous shots. There's the other end of the bridge. Now the best shot yet. And to zoom out to the wide shot. We're in New England, so I should say pull out instead of zoom out. In these parts they say push in and pull out. A little bit of Americana here. Wonderfully muted pastels on these old Victorians. Colors of the houses nicely echoed here in this leafy carpet. let's push into the action in that far yard there. If I can shoot between the trees there, yeah, not bad. Now, a quick focus and a freeze. Stowe, Vermont, well known as a summer resort long before it became a winter spot in the 1930s. And of course, some of the residents of Stowe have passed away from this earth. These tombstones, typical of this part of the world, some marble, some granite. 1/3 of all the tombstones carved in the United States come from a place 4 miles from here, Barre, B-A-R-R-E. Well, you can't escape modern intrusions here, but who wants to? A burger and fries and a large Coke, please. If they gotta have one here, they could do far worse than this building. Not bad. All right, our first real covered bridge. Now, okay, let's amble across this traditional covered bridge. Well, it's the off-season now, but Mount Mansfield is here year-round, and the ski resorts will happily carry you up to its slopes, snow or no snow. Look at all those ski trails. Wow. This would be great in the winter if you were a skier. Well, I paid my $5 and I'm sitting in a gondola, awaiting our ascent up to Mount Mansfield the easy way. And we're off. Oh, this will be great. Mount Mansfield is about 4,400 feet tall, taking hours to climb on foot, and about 25 minutes by cable. There I am. Whoa! Every time we pass these supporting structures, the old gondola shakes a little bit. This ridge of mountains, the Green Mountains, forms the so-called backbone of Vermont. At the top now on this sun-baked deck, got to show you this rather posh eatery. Reservations required during the ski season, I'm sure. Zoom in for a better shot here. There you go, après-ski. Shooting Aunt Molly as she shoots Flo and Joe with the expansive view behind. Check it out. Is this the result of acid rain? I hope not. Look at these beautiful but very dead trees. This is Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys country, organized as a defense against those bloody New Yorkers, then used with great effect against the British in the fight for independence. See if I can time this out to get a gondola in flight. Yeah, not bad. Never mind that I waited 5 minutes for this shot. Why should you care? And a tilt down reminds us that this massive range of mountains is made up of this stuff, granite and lots of it. So tough that our last great ice age in North America couldn't grind these mountains down as they did the rest of New England. Let me tell you about Ethan Allen. During the Revolutionary War, Ethan and the Green Mountain Boys performed a spectacular feat by capturing Fort Ticonderoga. God, I hope this isn't acid rain. Look at those dead trees. Anyway, this part of the world was once claimed by New York State as their territory. It was also claimed by New Hampshire. Well, New York petitioned to the King of England, no less, who ruled in their favor. So New York immediately assessed the settlers in these parts a purchase fee identical to the amount the settlers had already paid New Hampshire. Just didn't seem right to these soon-to-be Americans to pay twice for the land they already paid for once. So the locals formed a group of local militias under the aegis of Ethan Allen, and the Green Mountain Boys were born. They were a wild bunch who George Washington once thought had to be subdued through the use of force. But long story short, in 1791, this territory joined the Union as the 14th state, originally calling themselves New Connecticut, and eventually coming to their senses as Vermont. Well, a final look back on the delightful village of Stowe. Let's see if I can coax my auto exposure with just the right amount of sky to expose this classic shot of rural Vermont. Zoom in here for a little closer look. Here's an even better shot, the quintessential shot, you might say, the very essence of Vermont, and indeed, old New England. Along the highway here, about an hour past Stowe, and I just have to stop and show you this farm. Picture postcard perfect. Zoom in for you there, a little bit closer. And a wide shot to display the entire scene. And another half hour down the road brings us to the village, hamlet really, of Peacham. I'm going to spend a little time with you here because even though there really isn't much here, what there is of the very best picturesque rural Vermont. There's just a general store, a church, cemetery, a few houses and barns here, but oh, how they fit nicely into the landscape. When I first pictured this state in my imagination, I thought of it as a little more quaint, almost twee in its appearance, like this shot here. Except that for most other parts of New England, this is the norm, this twee business here. Vermont is 70% forest, with rugged mountains and little villages as outposts in this green and rocky land, this Vermont Green Mountain, pardon my French. The freeze frame is definitely a welcome addition to these new generation cameras we now have. And I've taken this technological innovation and incorporated it into my shooting style in an attempt to stop time for a moment, and also to employ the power of the frozen image, which takes me back to my still photography roots and allows me to experiment with the perfect synthesis of the moving image with real sound for realism and authenticity, and the frozen image for emphasis and for the sake of art. Gotcha. Good for freezing trucks, too. Well, the general store is getting its delivery of Heine. We're in the middle of nowhere, and the general store stocks imported beer. What a world. The trees are just beginning to think about turning over a new leaf. The color of the leaves just a tint or two in foreshadow of the explosion that will occur in these hills in the coming days. Dirt road. I love it. And just to the right is the church, with a steeple that won't be accommodated without a tilt up, I fear. This shot begs the caption, "Come home to Vermont," on some Chamber of Commerce promo. Laying on my stomach now, there's a great mouse-eye view of a meadow, with what looks like to be an obelisk in the background. I have no idea how that got there. We've crested the hill and the dirt road continues onward and down. But here to my left is a lovely cemetery, which, like its counterparts right around the world, is a perfect place for quietude and contemplation. Thomas Gray wrote his elegy in a country churchyard for Stoke Poges in the mother country, but it seems appropriate for this place too on this particular autumn day. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing herd wind slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the shimmering landscape on the side, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle drones his weary flight, and distant twinklings lull the drowsy folds. Or something like that. You English lit freaks are screaming at my paraphrasing, but what the hell, it's too nice of a day to give a damn. Check out the general store. Geraniums on their last blossoms there. But the notice board declares a vibrant community here still. Let's pop inside.
Hi. 125. It's nice weather before this.
Great shot. I'll title it The Road Less Traveled. Works for a travelogue, I suppose. These signs obviously arranged to confuse the British invaders and never changed. Let's get a better angle on it. Okay, a shot suitable for a basement wall. See you later, Peachum. Nice to know ya. Doing a little shun piking now, which is what they call backroading. Shun piking. As you can see in this shot, the colors are just beginning to turn on the trees here on the Vermont hillsides, and the berries are just about ripe. I wish I were here another couple of weeks later, where I could show you Vermont in full bloom, full autumn bloom, as the trees turn a crimson red. But I am not a man of leisure, so I can't pick and choose the times when I show you these travelogues. But notwithstanding that, having said that, let's nevertheless enjoy this last overripe gush of summer in Vermont. Standing now 162 feet above the Ottauquechee River, towering over this deep gorge, Vermont's Little Grand Canyon, the Quechee Gorge. Quechee. I'll zoom in here for a closer shot of the rapids here. And a pan to the left shows a sheer rock face. And continuing, we see the more mundane aspect of travel, tourists, otherwise known as us. All right, another covered bridge. This one on a darkened night, Ichabod Crane could tiptoe through, pumpkin in hand. now in Woodstock, Vermont, what the guidebooks call one of the 10 prettiest villages in the country. This village has been greatly gentrified, or yuppified, we would say, and is, incidentally, an interesting and pleasant place to be. A lot of dispossessed children of the 60s and 70s came to Vermont because of this place's acceptance of alternative lifestyles. The flower children settled here, bought businesses and homes, and have made a new life here. The 80s brought us the term yuppie, which lifestyle is also very much evident in this place as well. Mixed in with the "up" of the fiercely independent Vermonter, makes this area a veritable melting pot of cultures. Here in Woodstock is the last genuine wooden bridge built in Vermont, both a vehicular and a pedestrian bridge. Let's take a look at some of the shops here in the tony little town of Woodstock. Village, really, here along the main street. Oh, there's a nice scene there. I'll freeze that one for you. Focus up, freeze. Halloween breathing down our necks. Only 5 weeks away. Gonna hop on a skip to Thanksgiving, and then full thrust through Christmas into the dregs of January, where we all recover our strength, our cash flow, and our senses. The specialty of this part of the world are these huge, unusually colored cabbages, perfect for the autumn season. Justifiably famous architecture here in Woodstock. Standing in front of an art gallery during an opening of a new exhibit. Let's check it out. Now, I could make up for you some of the dialogue emanating from this place, but what the hell, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, shall we? Oh boy. Why is it that when we gather together to talk about art, we aspire to the Florentine Renaissance and end up in the basement of Dada, munching on something Picasso you on blue, when all we want is a Reuben from the Salvador Deli? You know what I mean? What? What'd you say? Our last shot of Woodstock, and it's a doozy. A little bit of Americana preserved by the man who wears the star. shun piking the back roads of Vermont. Had to pull over to show you a couple of Victorian inns here, worthy of Bob Hartley and assorted kooks and sundries. Quaint hotellery is big business here back east. We're in Grafton now, in the shadow of the spire. This was a busy little place at one time, the home to 1,500 citizens, with some industry as well. But the village fell upon hard times, decay and ruin more like. But then, in 1963, they set about the restoration of Grafton into the picture-perfect postcard it is today. Leaf peeping and shun piking at the same time. Can you stand it? Weston, Vermont. Marvelous little village, nicely bedecked in its autumnal raiment, and studded with its little jewel of a church. Village store, Weston. Let's listen in for a little while.
Oh, well. I knew that. Yes, I agree with you.
The village green with this tempting path. I love pathways. The Weston Playhouse, dark today, nothing to see. but there's this great view of Weston from the playhouse. The sign, one of the coolest ones. Wild Wings Crossing and Hapgood Pond Road. And this is what the sign refers to. Well, dusk gives way to night and catches up to us in Wilmington, Vermont. Chewed up a lot of scenery today, as we will tomorrow, as we see a little bit of New Hampshire on our way down to Boston and Logan Airport. But as far as today goes, it's a good thing it's getting dark out, because I can go no further myself. New Hampshire dawned bright and clear today. Perfect lighting for an actual drive through an 1862 wooden bridge. All right, about time. Whoa, if we can't do it in a hay wagon, at least we can drive through it in a car. This rather large body of water is called Dublin Pond. Just pulled over for this shot because it's such a beautiful day today. The flag flies proudly in the town of Dublin here, where is published the Old Farmer's Almanac, which tells us what sort of weather to expect an entire year in advance, as well as numerous other quotables. Coming into the town of Peterborough, which is commonly known as the place where Thornton Wilder based his timeless play, Our Town. This is my second time in succession through the town right now, looking for a Grover's Corner Bar and Grill or Grover's Corners Barbershop. I can find little pride or deference to the fact that this place inspired one of the greatest American works of all time. The Daughters of the American Revolution, however, are well represented in Peterborough with statues and cannons and projectiles in this great building. Well, at last, a tip of the hat to Thornton Wilder by a realty company, no less. Thornton Wilder had many things to say about this place. In his own words, it's a nice town, you know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable ever come out of it, so far as we know. There's, up in the cemetery there, the oldest tombstone, say 1670, 1680. There's Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys, same names as around here now. Yeah, and all the towns that lie around it. There's Jaffrey, North Jaffrey, and Peterborough and Dublin, and there far below is Grover's Corners. Here's the Monadnock Ledger, named after the mountain of the same name on the outskirts of town, which figured very prominently in Thornton Wilder's play, as did cemeteries in the final third act of the play. A lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. The people just wild with grief have brought their relatives up to this hill, and then sun and rainy days and snow. You all know what I'm talking about. The Congregational Church is over there. Presbyterian and Methodist across the street. Unitarian is over there. Baptist is down in the holler. Yeah, by the river. A little further afield is the famous Mount Monadnock that figures as a tongue twister in the Thornton Wilder play. Well, that's about it, folks. The final moment in the countryside before we head back to Boston and civilization. Just enough time for a couple more breaths of fresh air in this idyllic countryside of New Hampshire. where emblazoned on their license plates is the state motto, "Live free or die." Okay. Well, as usual, it's a mad dash to the airport to catch a flight. And Boston is not an easy city to navigate. The slightest hesitation is rewarded with 2 or 3 different horn blasts. They really gang up on you here. Okay, quick trip through the tunnel and we're almost there. Hurry up and wait. Flight's delayed. Oh well. Had a great time in Vermont and briefly in New Hampshire, not to mention the Freedom Trail in Boston in the previous show. Thanks for coming with me as I sought out the essence of this place. It was nice to have you along. And as the Massachusetts sun sets on the scene, there's time left only to say, see you next time in some place or other, as we chew up the scenery together and see what it's like on the other side. Till next time then, bye-bye.